Thank you for joining us, everybody, today. It's a rather large audience, so I guess we will concentrate on giving the demonstration and showing the use cases and slides that go with them, and then take questions at the end of the demonstration. So what we want to do today is to give a demonstration of 3 use cases that we've developed for the new ISO 23247 standard for digital twin manufacturing. We've worked on these use cases for the last 6 months or so to help validate the new standard while it was being balloted for its draft international standard status. First, a brief word for who we are. We are a working group inside of ISO. ISO is the International Standards Organization based in Geneva, Switzerland. It gets its mandate from the United Nations to develop standards for various aspects of technical data and machinery and so forth. Within the big umbrella of ISO, Technical Committee 184 works on industrial automation standards. That's led out of France by Patrick Lamberlet. And that's a fairly big umbrella for multiple subcommittees. One of the subcommittees is Subcommittee 4 on industrial data. That's led by Kenny Swope of Boeing. He's a relatively new chair and has been invigorating what Subcommittee 4 has been doing very much over the last 2 years. It is a group that's been around for a long time, developed the STEP standards, and is working on multiple additional standards. We within Working Group 15 do the digital manufacturing standards. So we focus on using what Subcommittee 4 develops in the manufacturing domain. I am the convener of that group since it started. We're up to about our 8th meeting now, so we've been around for 3 or 4 years compared to SC4's 30-odd years. Our team has got very good representation from the aerospace industry, who are very much interested in digital twins and using that in their production. We also have a lot of very necessary and highly supportive support organizations like NIST and Sandvik and ISCAR and Mitutoyo. Many of these are very famous vendors in their own particular fields, plus organizations like DMSC that develops QIF, and MTConnect that develops the MTConnect standard, MTConnect Institute. ETRI, got to give a call out to them because they did most of the work on writing the 23247 standard. And then some key universities, KTH in Sweden, will be using some of their facilities, and also University of Washington, their BARC lab, will be using some of their facilities for testing. So we appreciate all of their help. So the digital twin framework for manufacturing. It's all about creating and managing twins of things that are going on the manufacturing shop floor, things we can observe, not just the physical things, but also the processes which are ongoing, because this is manufacturing, and the whole point of manufacturing is to make something new from something that previously existed. We want to create this framework so that it becomes easier to do this digital twinning. Because it's a relatively new thing, we've been focused on giving an organization to the domain so that different tools can be plugged and played into the backbone of the framework. The various benefits would include things like production scheduling, enhanced understanding, dynamic risk management. We'll be showing some of those in our use case demonstrations. There's also lots of applications that could and should make use of those digital twins for real-time control, health checks, predictive maintenance, offline analytics, etc. I want to emphasize this is a framework. It's a framework for twins, by which we mean a digital copy of something that is observable on the shop floor. It is a framework only. It's not a long, detailed protocol specification like you would find in STEP or QIF or MTConnect. Those are all very detailed, very precise, very well written standards for different application domains. We are just defining a framework that allows you to use them together for the purpose of creating twins. And we are focused on manufacturing. Digital twins are being developed for all phases of the life cycle, all kinds of different applications all over the world. It's become a very hot topic. We are simply looking at making twins of what's going on the manufacturing shop floor and how to do that. Doesn't mean our technology can't be used for other things, but that is our focus, is twinning of the manufacturing shop floor. So here's a framework. The framework is layered on top of the IoT architecture, ISO 30141, which is also already an ISO standard. They're, I believe, proposing to start working on version 2 of that standard. We have taken that standard and its organization and entities and focused it onto the manufacturing domain. So again, we have the observable manufacturing element at the lowest level. And the key thing there is the whole process of observation, which requires us to have sensors that will emit signals that can be collected at the next level. That collection then is a recording of the basic data made by those observable manufacturing elements, which can be modeled on the third layer. The third layer is the core of the twin. Sometimes we call it digital twin entity. Sometimes we call it core entity. We've named it several things over time, which is not the only thing in the framework, but it is the key part of the framework. That's where you make your digital model of what you're observing. And then at the top level, there are the applications that want to use that, want to act on what the models are telling us, and want to learn how to do better in the future. So that's our framework here. It is, as I said earlier, a way of organizing the landscape into different layers so that each of the layers can focus on doing a particular aspect very well. This framework has been out for DIS ballot since May. The results have just been received. I'm pleased to say that we got multiple responses and we passed, so we'll now be able to go ahead and complete the standard for publication sometime next year. What we're going to do here today is show how to populate that framework with different protocols so that we can do different kinds of twins for different kinds of benefits. Before we do that, I just want to take a quick look at the various options that can be used. This is taken from part 4 of the standard, which talks about the networking and the various requirements that we suggest should be met by the different kinds of data protocols and networks that do the connections between the different layers. So you can see that the observable manufacturing elements can be using things like Ethernet or OPC UA or MQTT to send out their signals. The DCDE could be an OPC UA agent or an MTConnect agent. Then the core entity would use an MTConnect client or the QIF protocols to read the data that's come from the shop floor. The core entity would build the models And then the user entities perhaps will communicate using something like the Open API or the STEP protocols, or we believe the administration shell could be used as well, though that part has not yet been tested. And then the user entities is PLM systems, MES systems, ERP systems. There will be other twin systems, and the communication between twins is perhaps something we should put more emphasis on. Supervisors, you'll see some supervisors today in the various demonstrations. So anyway, that is our standard and its basic organization. Let's move on now to its application in different domains. So I will hand control over to David Odendahl of Boeing, who will give us the first demonstration. David, are you able to take control?
I believe so. Let's see how it goes. I'm clicking buttons. Are you with me on this one, folks?
No. Oh, not yet.
Because there's another button I have to click. And that button, share screen. Oh, there it is.
It's happening.
Yeah. Oh, there's all this button clicking is very confusing. As Martin said, hi, I'm David Odendahl. I'm a technical fellow for Boeing Production Engineering, and we're going to be demonstrating use case number 1, along with Fred Richter, who's also an engineer with Boeing Production Engineering. Looks like my notes are gone, so we're going to kind of wing it without them. Ever since the days of Rosie the Riveter, we've been building structures out of aluminum and various components. And it's something that's worked. It's worked very well for many decades. But we're trying to improve on that. Part of the reason we're trying to improve on that is we want to improve our quality and our productivity. Another real important reason we're doing it is that the actual act of drilling holes in an airplane and inserting fasteners, whether it's bolt type fasteners or rivets, is really, really hard on the people that are doing that work. We want to build good airplanes. We want to build good airplanes efficiently, but we also want our mechanics who are building the airplanes to have a good retirement free of musculoskeletal injuries. And so for the past couple, 20 years or so, we've been working on automating this drilling and fastening process. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, you can see a large riveting machine that's designed for inserting drilling holes and inserting fasteners on the 787. That's a really big structure. It takes up a lot of room. They're expensive and they're very inflexible. They do work though, but we're trying to move towards more of a dynamic process using teams of robots. And we think that we can do better with these teams of robots because we can drill more than one hole at the same time, and we think that we can dynamically allocate work more efficiently. So again, we can build airplanes better, more efficiently, and not injure operators in the process. But what happens is, though, when we move to the scenario like we have on the right-hand side, is it gets much more complicated. We have to look at the one robot may possibly be working faster than the other robot. We have to worry about collisions between them, and again, we have to make sure that we're doing this very efficiently. And so it raises a lot of interesting data problems and traceability problems of what our manufacturing process is. Again, we're moving from manual to automated, from static processes to dynamic processes, and from non-optimized processes to optimized processes. So you think about aerospace structures, the ones we make generally tend to be pretty big. They can have thousands of holes and fasteners of them. This picture, this highly sophisticated picture that you see down below, is representative of an airplane wing. And in that, if you look at the horizontal parts represent spars on the wing, the vertical ones represent ribs. And if you look at the different colored crosses, those represent places where their holes will be drilled into the structure, and eventually fasteners will be put in to hold the structure together. Being large, complicated structures, they're not necessarily in a nominal condition when they come into a machining cell. We call that at Boeing a condition of assembly. That could vary. It could be that we have some holes that we've drilled already. It could be there's some holes that we're choosing not to drill on this wing till later. Maybe we have a bracket missing. There's other reasons we could do that. And so that makes the problem even more interesting because we may not necessarily be running a nominal process. Another thing to consider is that the assembly requirements mean that the process sequence has some constraints. For example, if we start up in the upper left-hand corner, of that wing, and we just start drilling and fastening and work top to bottom, left to right, we're going to probably find out that that wing is stretched a bit and distorted during that process. So for that reason and for other reasons of eliminating burrs in between components, we have process requirements that require us not only to drill these holes in a specific place, but to drill them in a pattern that meets our one-up assembly requirements. Now, those requirements may not be I have to drill hole number 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 11. It could be that I have to drill one hole and fasten it and then drill some holes that are surrounding it before I move out to different parts of the wing. So again, I don't know exactly how many holes I'm going to drill until I get the wing in the machining cell. And I've got some flexibility in my drilling process and my fastening process, but I have to follow the rules to make sure that I don't get distortions on the wing. Again, all this gets really, really interesting when it comes to automating this process, and really, really interesting when we got multiple robots that are working at the same time. So looking at this particular process in our use case, again, the folks that worked on this was Boeing, the MTConnect Institute, and Step Tools. This overlays our problem onto the 23247 framework. In this particular case, we at Boeing, we get in our future factory, we get our data through PLM, ERP, through MOM, down to the shop floor. In this particular case, we're using a supervisory control in the user entity layer of the 23247 framework. In there, we have a condition of assembly adjuster, something that assigns it to robot, something that resequences, and something that monitors the process. And we'll talk about that a little bit more during the demonstration. Down below that, the core entity, or the digital twin entity, because we still don't seem to be able to make up our minds what we're going to call it. In there exists a process digital twin of the manufacturing process itself. Again, being a digital twin, it's updated live with the status of the process. And also a wing digital twin, which is a digital twin of the wing assembly, both as it comes into the cell, as it's processed, and as it exits the cell. Again, we call that conditional assembly. If you notice up at the top, we're using all data standards in here. MTConnect and STEP standards, STEP AP238, STEP AP242 are being used up in here. And so these particular upper entities are completely oblivious and don't care about the annoying proprietary standards that the equipment tends to use. So that means that we can use tools for more than one purpose, and they don't have to be tied to one particular point solution. Once we descend below the core entity into the DC-DCE, we have a translator that translates this down into Rapid, which is the language that these ABB robots use. And also the DC-DCE takes the MTConnect data, and it's where the MTConnect agent resides, and passes it back upstream through this framework. Down at the lowest level is the observable manufacturing elements. In this particular case, are 4 robots. So I want to go into a little bit more detail about what's happening upstream in the data preparation, because this is one of the more interesting parts of this particular process. So this is a bit of a detail of what the top row of the framework is. In that particular case, the data, the condition of assembly of the wing, comes in step AP238 into the supervisory control, which loads that base process. That base process is a nominal process for a nominal condition of assembly of it coming into the cell. Then what we do is we then bring in the condition of assembly of the wing as a digital twin of the wing itself, so that we can align the condition of assembly of the wing with the base process. Once we do that, we turn off any of the drilling processes that we're no longer using. We don't need to use because the holes have been drilled already. We then go through and reduce the process, that is, eliminate the drilling processes, and then assign them to specific robots. This particular robot cell has 4 robots. It's resident at the at the University of Washington BARC lab, where there's a test machining cell that's been set up there. Once we assign it to a specific robot, then we sequence the robots. We do an optimization of the actual tool path, the sequence of operation of the robots that allows us to keep within our one-up assembly requirements, as well as make sure we get all the holes drilled. Once we do that, then we hand it down to the DC-DCE, which then converts it into the proprietary languages that the actual equipment uses, and we do the actual processing. During the execution stage, again, this is the data coming in from the previous slide, translated through the DC-DCE translator, where we convert it into enhanced rapid. And basically, we take that rapid language and we put some tags in there that are compliant with step standards to let higher level information pass down to the robot itself. This goes down to the emulator, which Fred is going to show, an OPC UA server, an MTConnect adapter, and an agent where we're going to generate the twins. And during this whole process, we're going to monitor it. So what we're going to do now is actually do the demonstration. Let's see if I can be smart enough to make this go away. If we can see right here, this is in CATIA V5. What we have done is artificially created a condition of assembly for the wing. And you can see in this particular case, there are some holes that are drilled and there are many holes that are not drilled. What we'll do is we'll take the gadget that we have that will perform the process steps that we just discussed. And this is it right here. We'll start it. We're taking, here's the wing itself. Here's our base process. Going to select the base process. Looking at the condition of assembly of the wing, applying the condition of assembly to the base process, then taking out all the holes that do not need to be drilled and removing those processes. That's happening right now. Then we'll take that work, assign it to robots, and then we'll sequence the robots. And what we've wound up doing now is we've wound up creating a process that has been optimized and supports the existing condition of assembly of the robot itself. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let Fred Richter take over the rest of the process.
And I am trying to share. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, so the application up here on the upper left is our supervisory control, and I'm using it to translate the AP238 into enhanced rapid and sending it to our robot controllers. So that's what this is going to do right now. And as you can see, it says it's sending data to robots. Down here, you can see the programs are being loaded. On the right, we have our digital twin entity and step NC machine. And it and the supervisory control will both be tracking the MTConnect stream. So I'm going to load the condition of assembly in our digital twin as well. And I'm going to start the tracking. And so you can see our condition of assembly and the fact that some of our holes have been turned off here. And I'm going to go ahead and start the simulation. And as you can see, both applications now are reading our MTConnect stream as the working steps are executed. And so the green ones are the holes that have been completed. And I believe the orange ones are the ones that are currently in work. And so one of our robots, Cartman here, has finished already. You can see it's finished 2 working steps.
So again, what's interesting here is that the emulators are running, and also you can see on the right-hand side the digital twin is being updated, and in the upper left-hand side we're also using that same MTConnect data stream to monitor the actual process.
All right, and our robots are complete. And so now that the holes are drilled, we would essentially use the digital twin to update MOM and PLM with the condition of assembly. All right, David, you can do the conclusion.
Yeah. coming back to it, let's see how my button pressing is working. A little share thing is kind of odd. So basically what we've done again is we use these digital twins in order to keep track of our condition of assembly. Not only the condition of assembly of the wing itself, but the condition of assembly of the process. I'm going to show a little video here. This is the actual BART cell down at the University of Washington. Running right now. You can look at the right-hand side of the screen. This is it actually physically happening. This was actually done yesterday with a different condition of assembly. We had some logistics issues getting that done, but we do get to the point that we're actually driving the robots themselves. What's interesting about this is that, and handy about this is that these different tools that we have are all operating in standards. So the sequencer, the divider, and the optimizer are all using step standards so they don't get locked in the proprietary world. So it makes it easy to repurpose these tools for different purposes. Again, keeping in mind that the part digital twin is in step AP242, it passes that condition of assembly downstream. It lets us analyze what's going on. And again, we have that process digital twin that should make sure that we can keep track of the fact that we've complied to the actual assembly requirements. So now with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over use case 2 to our friends at Lockheed-Martin and at Ichitoyo.
We can't hear you yet, Jan.
I'm trying to come off mute and I'm trying to share. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see you and hear you.
Okay, very good. Let me go into presentation mode. And I got the same problem as David. No comments here. Okay, so I'm also gonna wing it. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever everybody is. My name is Jan de Nijs and I'm a tech fellow for Lockheed Martin for Enterprise Digital Production, located in Fort Worth, Texas. Welcome to use case 2. This use case is more focused on the inspection part of the digital twin, specifically creating a true as-built AP242 part digital twin. As in David's case, we also drill a lot. You see on the left there picture, you can get it off the internet. You know, you see basically something that we drill a lot of holes into. As one of our products. We took one of those holes out, and on the right, you see here the fundamentally a hole, you know, going through 3 different layers. In this case, a blue layer, a white layer, and a gray layer. The goal is, of course, to stick a fastener through there and actually hold those parts together. Now, when you determine the weight or the length of that fastener that you need, typically what you do today is you determine the worst case, the thickest part, if you will. You know, you take those 3 part numbers at maximum material condition, or actually that's probably the wrong word for it, but at the max end of the tolerance range. And you know, and then you stick a fastener in there, and you try to determine what the nominal fastener is by looking at it through a tolerance study. When we looked at that, you know, you can see on the picture how many holes we drill. We found out that if we do that, most fasteners are, of course, going to be too long for what they need to do. And pretty quickly, you're talking about a lot of weight, which is enormously important to our customer. So we decided to try to approach this in a different way. So what we wanted to do is all these parts, all these individual parts that make up these wing assemblies, they're actually, of course, made through the production process, and they're all measured. We have a lot of vendors on the outside, and you know, they all make these parts, and they all come up with measuring results. In order to pull all those measuring results together and find out what the exact condition is of these parts is very difficult. Therefore, we are thinking about standardizing that and using the QIF standard for that. So So the goal is to use QIF measuring reports to actually describe the final observable state of these parts, assembling them together, and then actually measure at the different locations what the fastener length needs to be. And with that, we can actually find out what the length is before we don't really have to go in there and measure anything, which saves some time and therefore makes the product more affordable to our customers. So the way we do that is I mean, of course, this use case has been developed a lot with Mitutoyo and step tools. The way we do this is we start with the AP242. It has the persistent IDs. Persistent IDs, very, very important for traceability through the whole process. Persistent IDs take the form of UUIDs. We make a AP242 QIF plan, which we load into the DCE, which is basically then executed at the observable level, which we will see a little later. Hanny in Fort Worth here is going to demonstrate how we actually take these measurements. We then basically load those measurements back into the DCE, from which we generate a QIF report. These QIF reports will be transferred to Martin in New York for step tools, who will then implement these into the AP242 and show us actually an as-built 242, which is a combination of the QIF report with the nominal part. And you'll see then he will assemble that, the three layers, the three simulated layers, he'll assemble those, and we can then measure the three assembled layers, and then Hani will verify that with the caliper. So with that, I want to give it over to Hani from Mitutoyo. So go ahead. You're up. Are you out there? I'm sharing, so let me know whether I need to go forward or backward.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just take one slide forward. And so everyone will see here that each of these colors, the white, the dark gray, and the green, these each represent each layer of that wing. And you'll see, 9 different pieces. Each one of those pieces represent, the hole on the wing. So going from the top left down, there'll be thickness 1, 2, and 3 for the aluminum layer, and then carbon fiber and the titanium, and so on. So, so we've basically segmented each of the thickness measurements around the hole so we can apply some variation, so we can actually see this change actually happen in real time. And Martin, you want to change one more? And so over here, I'll switch over to my computer. Basically, we'll be taking a Mitutoyo caliper as a Bluetooth transmitter on the back of it, which will send this data over to the MeasureLink software, which will take all of these measurement data, put them into a QIF results file that Martin's program can then read, and then we can create that as built, just based simply off of some caliper measurement. So with that, I'll go ahead and take the screen. And let me know if everyone can see it now.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, so I have on the left side of my screen here is a live demo here, which I'll be doing the measurements. On the right side here is the MeasureLink program, and I just wanted to show here that I have each of the layers. They're called AL, NOM, CF, NOM, so aluminum, carbon fiber, and titanium, and they're all going to be exporting a QIF 3.0 results file to somewhere on my computer, which then Martin can go ahead and again take these files using those UUIDs to match up the right measurement to the right characteristic. And so this right here in Excel is a QPR file that's taken this XML file and just kind of give us something easy to read here. And so these are each of those cupids or those UUIDs, these unique identifiers that will be persistent throughout the digital twin or the digital thread. So we have each of those layers listed here. So I'll go over into the real-time, the measurement mode here. And you'll notice that the CAD model that we have here in MeasureLink is one cohesive piece. So this more accurately represents what the layer will look like. But as I said, we've kind of segmented them so we can add different variations. So over here, this is going to be the aluminum layer, carbon fiber, and titanium. And you can see we have quite a bit of variation on some of the other layers. So I've gone ahead and already measured the thickness 1. So this column here is thickness 1, thickness 2, thickness 3. So I've already measured these 2 columns here. And I'll go ahead and complete the measurement here with the last one. So go ahead and take that data in there. So MeasureLink is just asking who the inspector is. And so we've collected that information there. I'll switch over to the carbon fiber. I have one last measurement to take here. And finally, I'll switch over to the last part, the titanium. Okay, so now with that, Martin can take this QIF file with these new results here and create an as-built model. And this is essentially what the stack will look like here. So these will be all 3 layers. We can see we have quite a bit of variation with them. So Martin, I'll kick it back over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see the 3 files that are just measured by Hani. And here is the nominal models with all the tolerances and the nominal data. It's all step data, so it can be used in many different CAD systems for the 3 layers. We want to make as-is models of the 3 layers so they can also be used for the measurement of the fasteners and for whatever other analysis the enterprise wants to do. So there are UUIDs on every tolerance. I imagine you can't quite read that, very small. The pop-up boxes were there with the UUIDs, which are the commonality between the QIF and the step, and also the MTConnect. So I import the QIF results. Need to go to my new directory, A4 there, I'll read the aluminiums in. And the aluminiums have very little difference, which is the realistic case. They are slightly different in size now, but we really can't see it with our naked eyes too easily. Going with the other ones in, the carbon fiber. Okay, now you can see there's a much more dramatic difference. For the point of view of illustration, we wanted to make sure that happened. So now the 3 stacks have definitely got different sizes. And lastly, go ahead and read in the titanium layers.
Yes.
Okay, and so now you see the
Good,
final dimensions of the 3 parts. And the thing is that we now can, because we have 4 AP242 models, we can go ahead and measure that. So what we're going to do here is have Hani call out the measurements using the caliper, and we'll confirm the measurements in the
Michael
CAD system.
T.
Okay, good, it's gone. hard to do two things like control the conference call
Yeah,
and
7075.
no, that was not good.
He's still there.
Still there, yes.
Hey, Michael Barberi, you're on.
Okay, I got him. I've got
I
him.
think the host can mute him.
I did. I just got to it. Okay, so I muted him. So now, Hanny, you're going to go ahead and make the measurements, and I'm going to see if they're the same in the CAD system. So you want to call out the first stack?
All right, I see 809.
809. 81.
81, very good. Second one here, 537.
539.
And the next one, 693.
694. Okay, so within the tolerance of error for the devices we're using, we're getting very accurate measurements, and therefore we can make accurate fasteners that minimize the weight. Okay, Jan, that's the end of the slides for the use case 2. So we can move to use case 3, right?
Before
Yes.
you do, there was a question on the UUIDs in the chat.
Okay, I don't know if you want to do questions now or later because there's a lot of people on the conference call. So this is quick. I think we should move on. Okay. At the end of all 3 demonstrations, we'll have time to dive into technical details, and we'll stick around for as long as anybody in the audience want to continue to ask us questions. So moving on. Actually, I need to stop sharing at this point. Is that correct? And hand it over to you, Bengt.
I think you should be able to see my screen now. Is that okay?
Not yet, because yes, now we have your screen. Daria, you're okay with starting the machining?
Yeah, I did it already.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So welcome to use case 3, which is about machining process optimization. The enabler for efficient process optimization is the access to relevant feedback from the process, and that is perhaps not the current situation all the time. I'm Bengt Olsson from product information. I'm a product information specialist at Sandvik Cormorant. Today I also have Daria Butkina at KTH, who is running the machine, and Martin Hardwick at Step Tools, which will be processing the information. We have also had great help from Sharab Singh at AMT to get the MTConnect communication protocol working. So the current situation is that we get a lot of information generated from the machine tool, but it's not, it doesn't have relevant context to be able to be processed by a digital twin. So this demonstration, we will show a machining process and demonstrate how to obtain a feedback stream that relates back to the planned CAM process and CAD design requirements. A feedback loop can be established and a digital twin apps can be a feedback loop can be established for a digital twin app to provide for process monitoring, computation, and storage of linked data. That's what this process, what we try to obtain, these pictures in the top. And let's see how we do that now. How we do this is that we enrich the G code with planned process steps and also provide actual part, serial number being machined, and actual tools being used. And as the machine is processing, this information, it will timestamp the process steps and send actual part and actual tool information together with a full set of sensor data in the MTConnect stream. So it will be an enriched MTConnect stream for the digital twin up to process. And in order to do this, we provide an feedback loop in the context of the planned information. So from the executed process back to the planned process. And this is what the architecture looks like when we put in our modules in the framework architecture. We are using step standards for communication of the model-based information. So we have a step NC program that is being translated. I should use my laser pointer. Step NC program, we have a translator that's post-processing this into G code, but it also put in step NC related process steps and the actual part being machined and tools being used, actual tools. This way the machine will report this information in an MTConnect stream and make it available for the, in this case, we have one digital twin application keeping 3 digital twins synchronized. It has access to the full MTConnect sensor data in this context now, step NC context. And this demonstration will use feed override as an example. So we can see how we can relate the information back to process step being executed and also feature being executed. What we are not going to show is the measurements, but that was shown in use case 2, but it's a similar flow that measurements can then also be related to the feature that you have measured. So now I'm going to turn off my laser beam and hand over to Martin, who will show the digital twin application and let's see how I stop. Where do I stop? There. Show digital twin application and a view of the machine.
Right, so can you all see my screen? So again, here I am in New York, but the video there is of a machine tool in the KTH lab in Scandinavia. A Hermle machine. And it's been ongoing, so we're going to do first of all catch up, and then we will be running with the machine for a little while. So it's loading up. Okay. Here's our results. The finishing pocketing had an issue. If I take a look at the features, we can see that this particular operation down here was working on specific tolerances, and what we now know is that because there was a feed override during these 2 phases being completed, we should check to make sure that they are within tolerance. So the basic idea is that as the machining takes place, the tool is monitored and flags are raised when issues are discovered, and then the digital twin now allows us to trace through to the tolerances which have impacted, and then we can move on to looking at the checks that should be made. So that's use case number 3. Let me just now move over to the closing remarks before we give you a chance to ask questions. What we've seen is 3 use cases, which I think are pretty interesting in themselves. The dynamic scheduling for the condition of assembly, where the work that needs to be done is determined by the state of the wing when it reaches the manufacturing cell. And an interesting follow-on question for this might be, given a particular condition of assembly, what is the impact of that on the schedule? What is the cost of having to meet certain different configurations, and is the price being set right for that? If you're interested in doing condition of assembly kinds of digital twinning, David Odendahl of Boeing would be pleased to talk with you about that. The second one, weight reduction for complex structures. Reducing the weight of an airframe is extremely beneficial for the customer, but when you have so many fasteners and so many suppliers producing so many components, you've really got to be able to make all those measurements and keep everything organized together. So in this particular case, we're using our digital twin and our CAD models. We're using the CAD models to model the actual conditions of the measured parts so that we can ensure that everything is working properly and we can minimize that weight. Small step forward from there would be, why are some of these fasteners longer than others? What is the issues that's making some parts require the longer fasteners, and maybe we can further reduce the weight by getting a better understanding of what's happening there. And then the last case is the quality of the features and tolerances. We showed a very simple example, which will be further worked. When we look at that machining data, we look at what's being worked on, what feature am I trying to machine, what tolerance does that feature have to meet, so that if a machining change, an override in this case, but it could be something else, it could be an abnormal load detected during the machining, or being a bit too close to the end of the tool wear for wanting to need to do some additional checks. When do machining changes impact design tolerances, and how do they impact the design tolerances? Is another interesting question. All these seem to be suggesting that now that we have digital twins, we should be beginning to do machine learning from those digital twins. As we send more and more data through the system, we can make more and more measurements and begin to predict, not only detect when a machining change happens, but also predict when that machining change might have an impact on the final part. So in conclusion here, ISO 23247 enables synchronized digital twin models of the products and processes on the manufacturing shop floor. And the reason why that is valuable to everybody is that it makes it very easy for applications to make digital measurements. If you want to make measurements on the shop floor today, of course you can do that, but it does require labor, it does require latency while that gets done. When it's all in digital representation in the machine, the measurements, the number of measurements is unlimited, and the time required to do it depends, it can all be done in real time. So we have our framework, we observe, we collect, we model, and from that we learn. Moving forward, what I'm proposing that Working Group 15 should do is form a club of people who want to be early explorers of digital twinning. So we're kind of a users club, but I called it an explorers club to make it sound more glamorous, perhaps. But basically be a place to practice and share digital twinning experiences. We would carry on doing various experiments as we have been over the summer, continue to learn how to do this better. We could share results with each other. How did you observe the load? How did you monitor the environment? How did you measure the tolerances? What speed did you use for the collection? We've done the twinning a number of times now in various experiments. If you do the twinning the collection very fast, you get a lot of data that can tend to overwhelm the systems. In this particular demonstration, because of those macros, we've got a better balance of speed versus measurement. Model, why are you using this model? We had a number of different models during the demonstration. We used AP242 for one of the use cases, or I guess most of the use cases. We used AP238 for 2 of the use cases, but not the 3rd one. We used MTConnect in all the different use cases. We used QIF in one use case, and we certainly wanted to use it in another one. The different models have different capabilities. Which model is the most appropriate for which aspect of digital twinning? And then last but not least, what are you learning from your models, and why is that valuable to you? That's going to be perhaps the trickiest question, but teasing that out will be an interesting aspect of the Explorers Club as we move forward. So those are our demonstrations. We've finished with 3 minutes to spare, but we did allow for 15 minutes of questions in the original schedule. So I now would like to open the floor to anybody who would like to ask questions. There was also the chat, which I can bring up here to get us started. Okay, some are observing that they're doing learning for aerodynamics, which is okay. Well, maybe. Okay, here's a question. Would this system using MTConnect be fast enough for any kind of real-time process control? One of the MTConnect team want to take that?
Yeah, this is Sharp here. I replied to Killian on a private message chain.
Okay.
So yeah, short answer, yes, it is. It depends entirely on the implementation and the system specifications. You can get very fast with MTConnect. You can use different formats, XML or JSON, it's all up to you. Heavily depends on the system and the device.
Okay, thank you, Shoaib. Here's a question from Jennifer about the UUIDs, particularly the CATIA UUIDs. David Odendahl, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I did, and I can give you guys specific on it at some other time if you like, but basically the UUIDs are stored as parameters within the different CATIA objects. So the holes themselves, the machining operations themselves, and also the GD&T, which we've done elsewhere, is held as user parameters in CATIA v5. It's easy to do. I'm happy to show you how to do it. Just let me know.
Okay, and just showing the UUIDs for the use case 2 demonstration. Here the UUIDs were generated in the CAD system. They're attached to the underlying step entity in the step file, but the same UUIDs, here we have one D3FC1220. That will be in one of the QIF files from today. We'll see if we get lucky here.
And Martin, actually, the models were created in Inventor, which doesn't actually support UUIDs. So we actually generated the UUIDs through another Mitutoyo program called MyCAD Planner, which did generate these.
Okay, and I did get lucky. Okay, there's D3FC on the first QIF file I looked at. So, because it could have been in any one, we had one for aluminium, one for carbon fiber, and one for titanium. But anyway, you can see the UUID on the background for the step file, and the UUID in the QIF file. And that is a very key aspect of everything we're doing here within this framework, as we have all these different formats connecting up the different parts of the system, the observations, collections, modeling, and learning. The UUIDs are our connectors for the points of information.
And Martin, this is Jan here. I also would like to make a comment here. The management of UUIDs from AP242 either back into these vendor solutions will become eventually very, very important, because we're going to rely on those in manufacturing, that those UUIDs somewhat probably are going to stay constant. So there is the PDAS effort where the CAD vendors get together with the users. That's where we try to figure out how to actually implement these properly. But yeah, UUIDs back and forth into vendor products is going to be an issue that really needs to be looked at. How we're going to deal, for example, with changes, design changes. If all those UUIDs change, the UUIDs become pretty quickly unmanageable, and we got to really think about how those are going to be implemented in the various CAD systems.
Yeah, Jan, this is Tom Thurman. Asa Trainer and I are actually working together with use cases from the CACS-IF and to actually develop a extension and a couple of new entities to go into the step information model. And so it's a very, very hot topic and very timely. And if you want to contribute use cases, that would be great. One of the things that we're looking at is the issue of regenerating a version of the design and then needing to retain the GUIDs or the UUIDs for all the objects that did not get modified. And then there's another research topic which we're hoping to move out of research so we can actually deliver a model of how you decide to regenerate that UUID itself. So a couple of very interesting things that we're looking at. We've got some ideas and done some preliminary work based on research that ACE has done over the last 3 years, but we want to move out of the research phase into actually getting it into AP242. So anybody that's interested in participating, send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat window.
Right, because I'm not so sure it belongs in the information model. I think it belongs in the framework, that it's used to link the different data together. And therefore should be in the file formats, not in the models. but regardless, these are things that need to be worked out. Another question here is the use case. We've use case focused on measuring the part once it's been done using sensors and additional tools, but are you thinking of directly using the execution data to analyze the part being done, possibly in real time? Yes, we did have a go at doing that. A couple of years ago at IMTS, we teamed up with DMG and Hyundai to investigate getting the data in real time so that we could make measurements in real time. It was a challenging exercise because so much data is generated when you start sampling, say, 100 times a second, and then have to model updates, maybe 30 times a second. That was all at the limits of what could be done in the middle of a show. But it also seemed like it was going to be something that was going to become feasible, more and more so. So as the laptops become more powerful and we get more parallel processors and NVIDIA chips and things like that. So yes, I would expect that people will start thinking about making real-time measurements from the observation data and then move on to doing real-time corrections.
This is Brian Nielsen. I've got a question about the, is there any work to be done that was done on making a difference between data that wants to be collected to persist versus data that's just timely information or timely data that is thrown away later, that's used for the management process, that's not kept as a persistent data?
We've kind of done some of that because the twins are the models that you want to keep. So in use case one, the condition of assembly twin is the one that's going to be put back into the PLM system. Whereas the MTConnect data that's streamed from all 4 robots might be kept on the shop floor for a little while, but wouldn't, I think, need to be archived.
And this is David. Yeah, I guess the short answer is, Brian, is that, yeah, we understand that, you know, these different levels of granularity and what we keep are important. And I think, you know, we've certainly had conversations about, you know, if you're using a machine probe, for example, to probe a hole, you keep the resolved circumference and position of that hole, or do you also keep the actual data that was used to derive that, and at what level we do that? And we need help from folks like you guys to figure out how to do that. And again, what makes sense with the fact that we do encounter real width, bandwidth, and storage issues.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
David, are you finding that you're getting sufficient information about the dynamic characteristics of the machines and the tools to be able to do those in-process estimates and measurements?
You know, it all depends. I mean, we talk about updating at 30 hertz. I mean, that gives you some information, but if you're trying to find out if, you know, if you got a rounding issue, corner rounding issue, that doesn't cut it. So it is certainly not something that's resolved. I think it's a matter, Tom, of being smart about what it is that you're trying to achieve. And in this particular case, when I'm thinking about drilling holes with a rope, in my use case, when I'm thinking about drilling holes in the wing of an airplane, I kind of care, for the most part, on keeping track of my condition of assembly. I'm kind of caring whether that hole actually got drilled or not. Again, on a robot itself, most likely I'm going to have an end effector that's actually going to spit out and drill the actual hole. So for the most part, I'm going to care just about whether that hole is there or not. I mean, that's the granularity that I have. But if I have some sort of an issue, I'm most likely going to want some more detailed information as far as axis movement and currents and things like that. And again, it's a puzzle as to what we store where, and it's tied into, again, what our IT infrastructure can support.
Yeah,
So we know we got,
more,
yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking more of the proprietary nature of the dynamic properties of the machine tool and the machine itself, because we tried to do this sort of experiment a number of years ago, and we basically ran into the issue that says those are proprietary parameters, and we're just not going to give you the ability to calculate to the level of detail that we're talking about those items that are actually necessary to optimize the machine tool paths. So you quickly get into the difference between being able to have a communication protocol versus, I guess, the business protocol of saying there's value added to the enterprise by that company providing a machine tool to actually participate in the digital twin.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like you guys are there yet, but I think that's part of the conversation that drives you to whether you're sampling at 30 hertz or 100 hertz, at whichever sampling rate you're looking at. Eventually reverse engineering. In some ways, you're trying to reverse engineering the dynamics of that whole system.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been involved in pre-digital twin, for the past 30 odd years. I've been involved in these sorts of discussions with suppliers as far as, characterizing performance of machines. And sometimes it can be just as simple as tell me where the center of rotation, what's the difference between the center of a spindle and the center of rotation for that axis, and what do I do about it? And, different suppliers have different cultures and different ways of responding to questions like that. I think that ultimately, for us all to be successful with this, we need to be able to convince one another that it's in everybody's best interest for us to have this information freely available so that we can do better processes and we can utilize equipment, based on what the machine's actual capabilities are. So we know that there's cultural issues to resolve with this. And again, some of it's technical and some of it, this is not a new problem and not a new issue about getting communication about the physical characteristics of a machine. And I think that, digital twin, digital thread stuff is complicated because everybody's in everybody else's business. We think about this, I'm a machining guy pretty much, but now I've got to talk to the design guys, and I got to talk to the quality guys, and I got to talk to the cutter guys and talk to the machine tool guys. And we all need to be able to share this information with one another. And I think that ultimately we'll find that this open communication is good for everybody, but it's, again, going to take some time to get there.
Yeah, I think a good example of a business model is probably look to somebody like JPL when they did their mission planning software and their mission planning process, where they got all those domain experts around the table. And very much, translating from one entirely different domain into this domain. But like you said, this general problem has been dealt with in other domains. And the question is, how to learn from those other domains so to accelerate the operations in this one.
Yep.
Okay, any more questions?
I can see one about if we consider dimensional tolerances, how they could be affected by toolware, how to achieve that. And that's basically to run this use case 3 for the life of a tool and add the verification process where we measure dimensions. Then we can learn how dimensions are affected over the life of the cutting tools.
Yes.
See which tolerances are drifting over from new tool to used tool.
Because the thing about a digital twin is it gives context to the data. So you can begin to observe how things change in the data over time.
And use case 3 provides the timestamps and gives context to the full MTConnect stream, which is important. That's also a massive amount of data that could be important to keep until you have verified the part that it's okay or that it's bad. If it's bad, just like David said, then you would like to go back and see what happened. Did the other sensors report something?
Okay, any more questions? Then I'd like to thank you all for participating today. This is certainly not the end of this experience. We're going to move on. Whether we call it the Digital Twin Explorers Club or something a little bit more formal, there will be some kind of forum initially managed by Working Group 15 in which we're going to encourage people to participate in digital twinning and share experiences so that we can all learn how to do it efficiently and properly and beneficially as soon as possible. So thank you all for joining us, and thank Zoom for allowing us to have so many people in the audience.
Yeah, wow, that really seemed to work, didn't it?
It really worked well. I guess they've had a lot of practice over the last 6 months. And it's
especially thanks to our folks in Asia who are, it's the middle of the night for them, and our folks on the west coast of the US is a little early and stuff. And I just can't get the image of Martin wearing a pith helmet leading the Explorers Club out of my mind. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. But thank you all very much.
I had an image of you with your Vice Commodore outfit being the lead explorer.
That too, yeah. We all have hats. We can all have hats.
We can all have hats, yes. There's lots of
Anyway,
scope there.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Great demonstrations.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.